Hello and welcome. Welcome to Agentic Economies. My name is Kenneth Cukier. I'm the Deputy Executive Editor of The Economist, and I have a lot of questions for our panelists. I'm sure you do too. We're going to go right into it. But first, I'm going to ask you the questions, not ask them. It's a simple question. It's a binary. Who here knows what agentic economies are? Raise your hand if the answer is yes. Like, that's 5 of you. Okay, who here says, I have no idea what agentic economies are? Raise your hand. So that's like less. There's like 3 people raising your hand. So the rest of you are on your BlackBerries, like writing your boss, I'm at Davos, I'm in the Congress Center. Okay, who here wants to know what agentic economies are? Raise your hand. If you're not raising your hand, you should not be here. I want to find out as well. I want to know what it is, who's doing it, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what are the risks, what does it mean for big companies and small companies, whether it be centralized or decentralized. Let's get going. Who is going to answer the most foundational question? What are agentic economies?
I'm going to ask the fundamental question, which is, what are even agents, let alone agentic?
We have a Jesuit in the house.
Right.
Okay, respond to a question with a question.
That's right.
Why don't we go even more atomically? There's AI, there's agentic AI. Who wants to actually say, just help us, support us with the foundational block of what is agentic AI? What are we talking about when we say that?
I'm willing to give a shot. I mean, I just bounced into Andrew Ng in the street and had a little chat. We met here 3 years ago first, and agentic AI did not exist 3 years ago because he only coined the term less than 2 years ago. So this is a new concept. And so no one has a precise definition, and Andrew himself would admit it. But so when we think of large language models, we don't think of those as agents, but you could consider them as gargantuan agents, but they're really large. There's enormous data sets, billions of parameters, and they're big, heavy things that you run on big server clusters. When you go to agentic, and you tend to send a prompt to it, and then it works through and does a lot of stochastics and a lot of different cool things, comes out with an answer. Agentic AI is much more micro, so you can program small little programming objects that have APIs, interfaces, and they do some little computational form, and they talk to other agents that can do different things, like maybe one talks to your calendar, and one reads your emails, and one sends messages off to the LLM, but they're small. And within 5 years, in my view, there'll be at least 1 trillion agents active in the system out there. And we won't know how many, just like we don't know how many ants there are on Earth, but there will be trillions. And they talk to all kinds of systems, and they'll do things. They'll be more active than the LLMs in terms of directing things. And they're also going to talk to the outside world because we've had a new standard just get developed called Modern Context Protocol. And so if you think of the agents as little nodes in a network, and I can talk about decentralized networks later, each agent has its own rules, just like in a decentralized network. The circle has rules. How does it talk to other agents? Through protocols. Well, now that protocol has just been adopted by Linux World. It was developed by Anthropic. It's really clean. And some people call it like a USB connector, but it's a universal protocol for communication to the external world or to other databases or programs. But so you're not only going to have agents, but you can have all these protocols. And so.
Got it. James, do you buy that?
I buy it and I don't buy it. So agents go back a long way in computer science, really as almost a design pattern of how to organize software. I think over time that meant, some kind of component in a way that you just described it, but I think also agents go back in a way as almost the human metaphor of an agent. We go back to, a famous video that Apple made of the Knowledge Navigator, which was kind of an agent. And that's more akin of what people think of agents like their ChatGPT or their Claude. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to probably see agents across that spectrum, many of these small components that do things autonomously, but also chunkier agents that represent us, and also agents that actually we're interfacing with, not just purely autonomous software. So all of the above.
Yeah, totally. Let's not get hung up on the definition, but I think we can agree on.
You started this.
I know. I totally got it. Yeah.
Hey, we want to know what we're talking about.
I just want to say you're all wrong. Okay. But I think that we should just focus the target on the most essential aspect of it, which is today everything that happens online almost everything that happens online is spurred by a human being doing something, a click, a command line code, a prompt, etc. Now we're going to be setting things in motion that are then going to be autonomous and do their own things. And it's going to look more like ants or like software, not like human beings. So it's not like you're going to have your guardian angel agent. I'm going to have my one agent on Amazon doing a shopper. I'm going to have 10,000 agents. Personally, because I will have my banking agent for 10,000 different ways in which I interact with the bank, whether it's for a home.
Now you're going to have both.
No.
Who's handling those 10,000 agents?
Well, exactly. I have an agent to handle the agents.
Yeah,
So we
well,
get
that's a difference.
layers
You
of
got to have
layers.
management
Yeah,
agents.
I told you the Jesuits are all going to be involved in this.
Yep.
Okay, so we now know what an agent is, and we know that there's going to be a lot of them. And you are already raising your hand, David, because you want to object to everything I've said.
I just want to complicate the term a little bit. I think we have to acknowledge, you just take a quick walk down the promenade right here in Davos. Agent is a marketing term. You know, it is absolutely the marketing term of this promenade of this year at the World Economic Forum.
And this surprises
You're
me.
here.
No, I mean, this has been in the air for the last year plus, and I think we have to think of it in the way that it appeals to average people. And I think the analogies are the travel agent, the real estate agent, the customer service agent, the kind of factotum that goes out and does the things for us and brings us the things and saves us lots of time. And so it's being sold to people as that. And I think we have to question that a little bit because it is not a mature technology right now. It's in this chasm of a lot of hype in the hype cycle, but it's not really quite delivering in a reliable way for us. So I just want to put that out there too.
Now, Gordon has been nodding and listening. He's been like a
I was going to say
he was like a
it was not
bodhisattva.
enough hype.
Exactly. He's been like a bodhisattva, wisely nodding, listening.
The wise
to us.
economist.
Exactly. Please tell us.
So I come from a background of finance and trading initially. Now I work for Circle, which is a payment firm. But I've seen agents in finance. There are trading bots. If you think about most of the financial market, it happens on a very high frequency basis. Right? How do people actually trade on such high frequency basis? Because they don't. It relies on somewhat autonomous agents. Of course, there are different degrees of how autonomous these bots are, these trading bots are. But that has been around for decades at least. That's the formal agent. I think today we're talking about agents that are more autonomous, that have more decision rights and more tools to use. Taking what Ra said about the usage of these MCP protocols, model context protocols. Those are new tools that they can enable agents to basically grasp the world and think deeper. Right? With LLMs, they can think a bit deeper than just perhaps simple machine learning that I've seen in finance. But I think it's just it's a spectrum of how intelligent they are, how much autonomy they're given.
Okay, can you give some examples of agents in action that are happening today or that you foresee in the near future? Let's start with you, Gordon, and then we'll broaden it out to others.
Yeah, the most common one that I think most people think of today are the coding agents, right? The cloud code, and these are sort of modular in that they think in small pieces. They have tool retrievals, and there is a defined goal of what you want these agents to do, which is to code in a specific way. So that's what mostly resonates with people today, especially on the developer community. But I think it will very quickly evolve into agents that could do many things depending on the access of tools they have. Maybe it is booking flights and travel or buying some products. But it also requires the fundamental tools of not only acquiring those, talking to APIs that could make the orders, but also paying for them, figuring out a way of
Okay, so I want to stress that I think you've just answered the question of what agents can do, but not an example of one in action today. Are we talking about things that are hypothetical, or can we point to something live? Go.
Here's your most simple agent, and some people may disagree with me, that's been around for many, many years. your email rule that filters or labels things. It's an agent, it acts autonomously.
killing me.
And it works, and so now you don't even think of it as AI or anything, or the agent.
Boring.
But it's not AI. It's a rule-based.
soon as-
It's a rule-based system. That's all it is.
Well, that was all of AI for 20 years.
But also,
Like,
even if it's AI, it's boring. It's not going out there. It doesn't
right,
have my
once
credit
it
card
works, you
details.
won't call it AI anymore.
Yeah, we know that as well. No, of course. But I mean, that's a classic aphorism in AI.
And it's
of
always
course.
been true, and it will continue to
Of
be.
course. But I want to make a difference between the pedestrian form of it and why we're spending billions of dollars today in marketing and taking the word agent appearing in every promenade front. Give me an example.
So we all interact with agents every day because we are all the victims of scams, like all the time, and or attempted victims. Like, we get these scam text messages, and also the presidential candidates in the last election in the United States. So many of the campaigns were using agents to identify potential donors, to sway them towards different political positions, and they were, gathering data through the process of having conversations with them, going out into the world, and probably not doing. We probably don't know exactly what they were doing. There are probably also, disinformation agents out there spreading incorrect information, trying to manipulate elections and politics too.
Okay, so we're talking about the agentic economy. So what does the economy look like when all these agents are going out? Ron.
I'm willing to take a stab at it. So I'm going to introduce I'm a systems thinker, so I'm going to introduce two conceptual frameworks quickly. One comes from the book I co-authored called The Starfish and the Spider, The Unstoppable Power of Leaderless Organizations, which is a book that describes the architecture of decentralized networks. So let's do that super quickly. There's only three parts of every decentralized networks. There's circles. There's circles at some level. Then there's protocols, and there's ideology. And in the case of agentic computer science, the agents can be a circle, and then the network is like the protocol, modern context protocol. And they also talk through APIs, and they also talk through other networking calls. But they communicate with each other, and they form, and they reorganize. So those are circles, then the network we've just talked about. And then the other thing that holds networks together is the ideology. And in the bubble yesterday, or in the dome, where we had discussions, we were talking about what's going to be the sociology of agents. Because you're going to have a community of them. They're going to be collaborating. And how are you going to set up the rules and the concepts to keep them working consistently or towards a common goal? This is a new discussion. And I furthermore threw out, what about psychology? What's the psychology of agents? And I was shocked that the panelists jumped on it and started answering the question. But so the ideology is going to be like, what's the, GDPR is an ideology, effectively. It's a constraint. So now let's talk about economics. So the Starfish and Spider talks about those three parts. In economics, I worked on this problem because when I was coordinating the cyber centers for the US government, the question was, what are these networks worth and how much should we spend to defend them? And so I had to answer a question, what's the network worth? So what is a network of agents worth? The value of any network is the summation of the net value of that network or service to everyone who uses it, even if they're on the opposite sides of an economic deal. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look at Beckstrom's law, it's an economic theory I developed in 2008 that is the atomic networking model for valuing networks, which I think might work here, and Gordon and I were talking before. And if it works, then the notion is, if you look at an agentic system, the question is, who are all the users? And then how much net value does it add to each one of them? And so an agentic network that Amex may set up or Circle may set up to do something adds value to them, to the company, but it also adds value to you, or you wouldn't use the network. You have to just analyze that in a simple math. What's the summation on every single transaction, every click or every payment or anything? What's the value of that transaction to you versus what's the cost? And the difference is the net economic value added. So I think Beckstrom's law could be used. So the agentic economy is going to be how do economic systems get affected by these new agents coming in, and how do we say this is more valuable or less valuable? So like a hacking agent, it's very valuable to the hacker. If it works, they steal your money with a scam, and it's a negative economic agent to you, which is why it's a social bad. It's a net social negative ad. Anyway, so those are two conceptual thoughts to throw out there.
I think for agent economy, you had to have transfer of value for either services or goods, right? Maybe hacking or a scam is one type of service that have negative value, but you have to have the agents not only doing API calls, which there's a lot of API calls already, but also having the transaction being valued and adding up to eventually GDP. Right? That's how economists think about values of economy. Well, what is the gross national product? Right? Can you add up the agents' transactions in a way that is both valuable but also add to the productivity to the whole economy? And I think we need to do that at some point. Agents have to eventually pay each other in transactions, and perhaps there'll be even things like lending, escrow, and so I think finance is also just a core part of economic activities because for every type of transaction, you had to have the finance associated with it.
But I think this is a fine point about your definition of what is agentic. So now we have these sort of our agents from different entities that have value transferring versus just the software engineering. I built it with agents together. It's just a way for me to build it, right? So, and again, this economics part of it is going beyond it as just a software architecture, and that the economy part is what's making it different to be agentic, right? You got to differentiate if we're going to even understand it.
I think there is an elephant in the room here, though, with the economic question. The economic impact is, what is the impact when it takes away jobs? Like if the agents take away, as maybe Jamie Dimon warned us about yesterday, if they have a significant job loss caused by AI agents, what do we need to do from a public policy perspective to think about the impact of that on the economy? And if job loss is so massive that it destabilizes the political system, what's the impact of that?
David, let me hold off on the implications and the negative attributes to this and stay on the topic, on the financial exchange moment issue first, and then we'll get to that.
Okay.
Because what Gordon has described, all three, James and Rod as well, is profoundly different than today. It's a society of machines, not a society of people.
That's right.
And now the machines will be doing things that we have set in motion, asked it to do on our behalf. But as we know with all AI systems, and that was from Alan Turing's original paper in mind, they are going to be building up knowledge recursively based on feedback, and they'll eventually be going off into their own goals.
Absolutely.
Because we will, and this is now Stuart Russell, not Alan Turing, because we'll fail to specify exactly what we've wanted, and so the King Midas problem is. But before we talk about the harms, let's go back to this idea that they're going to be exchanging value, as Gordon put it. That implies that they might actually be taking out loans, putting money in escrow. That's quite profound. There needs to be interoperability. Right now, the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. LIBOR used to be the London interbank rate, used to be the ways in which most contracts in corporations were set because it was so stable, not anymore. So there was a fungibility or an interoperability, as we say in computer science. Maybe that's the role of Bitcoin, or a different other cryptocurrency that the machines will be using to make payments.
Well, Ethereum's being used heavily, for exactly this.
Totally.
Because of the contracts.
So let's talk about what this looks like. So what might they be doing? Who might be the ones to run it? Where are the economic opportunities for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think the usage of blockchain is very likely, right? Because today, you pay for a lot of computes and LLMs through, swiping, essentially entering your credit card number. But I don't think you necessarily want a world in which agents are all given credit cards, and then that's a very messy world. Also thinking in terms of some of the smaller services, maybe you just want to retrieve some information that costs very little, a fraction of a cent. That requires payments that could handle micropayments or streaming payments. So I think blockchain is actually kind of built for that. It's a lot of programmability. It's directly machine readable. Maybe it will be an Ethereum or EVM-based system. The good thing is a lot of these blockchains are quite interoperable already because many people have built around these blockchains, have interoperability solutions. So I think it's very likely that it could be adopted by agents.
And it gets to kind of your point, your argument, James, and I'm of a different school. I mean, I think there is enough of a shift here in technology that a new term is worthwhile. And there's never precise definitions, but I don't look at subroutines as agents per se. But I look, containers in the cloud, kind of agentic. But some of the thing that's going to be really unique is these agents can self-spawn that didn't happen before. And one of the debates is whether humans should be in the loop and decide whether agents reproduce themselves. Because if they don't, these systems can spin out of control, number one. Number two, the agents can create new agents. They can program them. They can create them. And that's totally different than future computer programming, where humans had to go program it. And then think of not only can the agents program, but think what LLMs could do when agents talk to them and tell them what to do to program. So don't think it's just about automating what software engineers do, but the agents programming and creating new systems and new characteristics in those systems. So it's just going to be a much more rapid evolutionary system, more difficult to control, which is why I think ideology, culture, sociology, community, as you talked about, Kenneth, are going to be really important.
Though, I mean, you just hit on a lot of problems with this to make it stable and work and do what you expect it to do. And so I'd say you're right in that it's hype, because it's not going to work well for a while. And, you know, we need a lot more standards, and people like Ramesh, who's out there also really trying to push how to do this in an open way, because this stuff needs a lot more openness to understand how it's going to work well.
I'm just going to dissent and say the agents are doing a lot of work already. I'm involved in numerous companies that have very, very successful pure agentic-based software in cybersecurity, and also in industrial automation, and also in other company workflow stuff. The agents are working. They've been unleashed, and
Tell us more. Expand, sort of stretch our mind in terms of how agents are at work.
Give you an example. In the cybersecurity field, there was a breakthrough about 7 or 8 years ago when a company I work with decided to use graph AI for threat management and threat response. If you look at a cybersecurity operator, this is the person that gets a threat coming in and they have to decide, what do I do with all the network and all my tools to respond to this thing? They have to use 116 different programs to get their job done, which is overwhelming. Imagine, and a serious pro like from Goldman Sachs, 20 years doing this, makes $500,000 a year. So imagine you can use graph AI that's designed off the entities you need in threat intelligence and in network security and all this software. And imagine that software can take anyone in this room and any graduate from any college in the world that speaks English half decently and turn them into a Goldman Sachs level cyber professional in 2 weeks with 5 times the productivity. And that was possible with graph AI, okay? Now what I tell you is there's new people starting to do that same work with agentic software. And it looks like it's going to be even more powerful, is more powerful in certain applications. So that's a concrete example of where a graph model AI system, which was most advanced in the world 7 years ago, is now going to face new products out there that are purely agentic, and they are working. So that's an
Well,
example.
what's the key idea about agentic that's making that application work
That the agents
than the old one?
that they're
Yeah.
collaborating,
Yeah.
that they're developing new patterns.
And they're spinning off new agents that learned a threat.
Clearly, you got a huge data analysis problem here and pattern recognition problems. So just assume you've got agents that do those things, and you got enormous amounts of data, and you got to talk to all the security appliances, but that the systems are reconfiguring themselves and changing and evolving much more quickly. And often in ways people don't expect, by the way. And by the way, so Agentic API is going to be incredibly productive and prolific, okay? It'll add to almost every human process in terms of efficiency and output, okay? And as well as crime. Crime will get harder and better, which is happening in the cyber field. And that's why my concern is AI safety. Is if we think we're concerned about LLMs, we'll multiply it by 10 for agentic. And I think when we come here next year, I'm glad this is the last session because we're talking about the agentic economy. We'll see a lot of that economy unfold by the time we're together. And we're going to be talking more about AI safety. How do we keep this stuff under control? Because there's a lot of malefactors. And just super quick speech, and I'm building off stuff Kenneth has said in other environments in part, the defense panel yesterday and others. But a lot of people ask, what's the difference between human beings and agents, and between AI, because AI is getting as smart as human beings? Well, I have a pretty simple solution. For those of us, if you believe in God, then we have souls. Machines don't have souls. Well, if we have souls, that's a difference. And the framework of faith and religions is to create morality, which is ideology, and it's to create a better world. Now, you don't have to be, a lot of people don't believe in God, and that's fine. It's free. Most countries are free, thank goodness. But if we have souls, then that's part of why we're different and why we need to keep these things under control, because otherwise, what's the argument? We're meat machines, and they're silicon machines, and meat should dominate silicon. I don't know how you do the ethical Anyway.
Let me pick up on the idea that, that you talked about in terms of self-spawning and control and reproduction and reconfiguring beyond what we expect.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that machines will be collaborating and self-spawning, that makes me feel like, oh, shit.
Yeah, it's going to be a dynamic.
Isn't that a virus?
Yes, in a way, it's going to create viruses. The hackers are using it for, for creating new viruses and exploiting vulnerabilities.
They got to have an objective function, right? What is the objective function? I guess the current agents are at least limited in that you tell it what is the objective function. Maybe it is to protect the system. Maybe it is to create crime. But if somehow it come up with its own objective function, and if it's just like a purely utility or profit maximization, it could be one. But ideally, we impose some morality to it, as you mentioned.
Bingo.
Exactly. And that's quite important.
Exactly.
So, David.
Yes.
Yes, you're clear. You're looking pensive. Please.
So in California, I do a lot of public policy work. I've testified 17 times in the last 2 years about AI policy. And one of the policies I spent a lot of time on was the California AI Transparency Act of 2025. I helped draft that. It's now the law in California. But one of the things we really wanted in that bill that we were forced to remove by the powerful interests of industry in California was a requirement that when you're interacting with an AI agent or any AI chatbot, that it disclose to you that it is AI, and that you would have, the right to that, and that you would have watermarks in not only images, audio, and video, as we do have required in California starting Jan 1, 2027, and we have in the EU also starting very soon, but we don't have that requirement in California on text and agent interactions. I'm hoping that we get that in the next year or so, but I really do worry that these agents can dupe a lot of human beings.
Okay. It is clear that we are at the outset of something, but I think it's also clear that the thing that we're on the outset of doesn't yet exist. The agentic economy is something that we're describing, but we're not living in. When do you think that we'll be living in it, and how will we know?
We're kind of living in it. It is a spectrum. Like we are experiencing these things. Also, you wanted examples. I don't know if anyone's tried it, but OpenAI in ChatGPT, you can turn on agent mode. I clicked to turn on agent mode, and the first thing it wanted me to do was then give it my credentials to a bunch of different websites. I was like, ooh, I'm not sure. And have any of
Is
you
that an agent by the way we've been defining
But of
agents
course,
here?
let's drill down on
That's
this.
a good question.
David didn't want to give all his personal information because, why the hell would he? That sounds reckless because he doesn't know how it's going to be used. He wants control.
And this is a related question of, should AI models have legal statuses as human citizens?
Of course not.
Well, you say of course not.
No, but
this is being
maybe like
discussed.
corporations, maybe even
This is being proposed.
maybe
I don't want
more
corporations
than
to
human
have it
beings.
even, but
Humans don't have there's lots of domains in which humans don't have accountability, and we should. So maybe we want to hold AI to a higher standard, not
AI
fall
is
to
united.
the lower one.
I'm all
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
Well, you should give them some identity, right? That's how you build reputation. That's how you know you're a criminal, you're not a criminal. So having some sort of identity, but not having the same, clearly identifying that you're AI, not human. That's important.
Gordon, that's a police state. My AI has the right to be anonymous and to spew misinformation to everyone. That's free speech. Free speech for robot rights. All in favor of free speech for AI agents, raise your hand. Shoot that man. Shoot that man now. He's out. This is Davos. If you can't shoot a guy for his opinions, what are you doing? Okay.
That's MIT.
This is an active debate in the EU right now because the EU does have the EU AI Act. Article 50 requires disclosure when you're interacting with AI. And there's a question, does the disclosure need to include the version number, the company that made it, or just I'm AI, hi, and that's enough. And I think this will be an important debate. Agents may need to have ID numbers or passports, depending on how the code of practice on Article 50 of the EU AI Act turns out.
So identity management is a huge problem with agentic AI. Identity management is when you have a name, you have a log on, there's all kinds of things. You have role-based access on systems, we call it RBAC. Huge crisis with these agents coming in who can act like humans, want to act like humans, do when hackers succeed. look like humans, but we're going to have to treat them with identity just like we treat humans. But instead of having 8 billion humans on the planet, what happens when you have 8 trillion agents? And they're getting spawned dynamically, but we are going to have to identify them. And this is a discussion. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, but keep in mind the solution is also computer science, right? 1 trillion sounds like a big number to
Few more
human
bits.
beings. Exactly, but 1 trillion is nothing for a computer.
Fair enough, but my point is they have to have an identity, and you have to give them permissions on what other agents they can talk to or not, so all your money doesn't go to a bank somewhere else, or Bitcoin, and deplete your pockets. This is a real issue.
Totally, let me just pick up on it, and you're on a roll, which is to say, we've already done this in the offline world. There's not a ship that sails that doesn't have to have a flag on it for its nationality, a name on it.
Cars have license plates.
And when it has a call beacon, it has to give out its call beacon, and actually it has a requirement to give out its location as well of a certain tonnage.
Yeah.
So we've already imposed that requirement on physical things. To do it in a digital setting for agents should actually be easier.
Should be, but one point, it's a decentralized system. And like someone was asking me, because I was the CEO of ICANN for a while, and the ICANN is the steward of the root of the internet. There's only one root of the internet. Everyone says, well, why can't you create a multi-stakeholder body, Rod, like you did, like ICANN has, and like control agentic AI? And I'm like, because there's only one root of the internet, because you need to keep all the addresses and domain names consistent to make the internet look like one place. Agentic AI is the opposite. I can write agents on my machine. You can write them, anyone anywhere in the world, and can unleash them and replicate them. There is no central control point. There is a control plane that's coming together somewhat, and MPC is a candidate, but some engineers don't think it's going to make it. But MCP, Modern Context Protocol, is at least a consistent communication protocol at the application level that's going to be heavily used. That's where the identity management, where people are looking at building the identity managements right now. Because at least you've got a spinal thing, you can tap into potentially, but it's not centralized. There is no central control. So we can have our values and our religions and our ideologies for our bunch of agents, but you can't mandate it,
Okay,
Yeah.
We're going to open it up for questions in just a second, or maybe now. Let me just do one last thing. I want to get to harms, but before that, I want to ask, even if it's the internet and the web are decentralized systems.
Except for the root, except for the domain name.
Except for the domain name system,
Right.
and ICANN, all that, of course, to be sure. However, big tech, large companies took a dominant position, and we're sort of all suffering through that, and also the beneficiary as well as the victim of that. Do you think that, why do we have any confidence that the agentic economy is going to be one that's where small is beautiful, to take the Schumacher phrase, or small pieces loosely joined, to take the David Weinberger phrase, versus one that is going to be ultimately evolve into a hierarchical system where it's going to be big technology companies running it, and we're all going to be the vassals of them?
I think we shouldn't take for granted, though, the idea that the internet is decentralized. There are lots of people, for example, in Iran right now, who don't have access to the internet because the internet is controlled and blocked. So, we enjoy that in certain countries. But yeah, it's a great question, and I think it has to do with governance. The concentration question is being dealt with right now with antitrust regulators in the U.S., the UK, the EU are some of the principal domains, but other countries are jumping into this too. And there's this question of do these giant companies survive for 5 years, or do they get broken up? And so I think that's actually the question you're asking is a public policy decision that we will all be participating in making by electing people that go along with big tech or don't.
So Milton Friedman, the famous Nobel-winning economist who is very Hayekian and pro-market, his point was you set a thief to catch a thief. You set a businessman to compete against other businessmen, and by having a market and capitalism was his uber alles, but by having a market, you get these benefits. How do we ensure that there is a free-flowing market for agentic AI systems so no one company has a dominant position?
I think we need a system for value exchange, right? The original web had an issue of you can't directly monetize it. Therefore, you went down the advertisement route, you went down the data acquisition route. Right, that didn't actually have a free market, right? So you need to enable these agents to pay for each other and pay for transactions and services. Then you get a more market-based economy.
I believe what Gordon's company is doing, what Circle and what Tether is doing, is promoting a more distributed small economies because it's helping people in third worlds that suffered from garbage currencies to have a chance to put their wealth in real currencies and their savings and build their businesses without that massive volatility. So that is where Latin America, how many hundreds of millions of users are there of stablecoin? Like 300 million or something?
Something like that, yeah.
It's huge. So, I mean, but Agentic AI, the tier one players are going to fight like, they're already screaming with huge teams and it's in their system. They're going to build it out. They are going to be very powerful. Look, OpenAI came up though with LLMs. They weren't a tier one player and they're worth $500 billion now. There will be new multi-billion-dollar opportunities in Agentic AI. And every established huge player is going to fight like a dog to protect their position. They'll try to build, for example, their own proprietary identity management systems that only work with their tools and architectures, not with anybody using MCP, et cetera, and that's fine. That's part of a free economy. And none of those tier one guys owns the global market. They're fighting like dogs. And if you think of the big US guys are now threatened by the Chinese coming in and doing great open source technology. It's just since Davos last year, the top 3 downloaded LLMs are Chinese. And they're good. And people talk about power and efficiency. Well, DeepSeek is kind of the leader in the category. And they're a new player. And people may say they're cheating. It's new math. It's more efficient. So globally, I think there's competition. And the big guys are just going to get bigger, would be my prediction.
Okay, we are now going to open it up. If you have a question, raise your hand so I can get a sense of how many questions are in the room, as high as they are. Okay, good. The 2 gentlemen here in the front row are the ones who put it up first. We'll go to them, and then we're going to bring it back down. Okay.
And maybe we should take questions from women, since we're all dudes.
Oh.
Yeah, since you're...
This is Davos. I can do what I want. Give me my champagne. Give me my caviar. We'll take questions from everyone. Okay, please.
You said first. Hi. My question will go to David. I have given multiple speeches in Middle East, and most of it's related to agentic ecosystem. And I was thinking about how they communicate together. And then I received certain questions, mostly related to accountability. And honestly, in all of this speech, I couldn't find an answer to it. So I said, I'm going to go to Davos to find it. And if I couldn't find it here, it's a problematic. So the question is mostly related to, we know, and I am a big believer, that in the future, agents will speak together. We will have a mix of agent to human and a human in the loop as well. Mm-hmm. But the point is, what about the accountability? If we want to open the autonomy, then actually we need to reduce the guardrails, which mean now that agents might act in a different way. I'll give an example that if there is a bad or evil agent speak with another agent, that agent have an access to a war agent that fire a missile, then who's the responsible? And when you go to those agents, is the responsible actually the vendors who build them, or actually the person who write the instruction? Or where are we actually sitting in that? If we go to the rules, actually, for the example, AI Act and all of these, there is nothing that handles accountability with it. If there is a high-risk system, they will go to the company, they will say, give us an evidence that your system will act in a good way. And they will provide certain things, but nothing will be solved. So I want to hear from David, and maybe as well as Rod.
My biggest criticism of the EU AI Act is, and from like day one when the text was finalized, is it doesn't adequately deal with the liability question. And when I put that critique to people at the European Commission and said, why? They said, oh, because we're doing something coming soon, it'll take us about 3 years, called the AI Liability Directive. And that was going to clarify all the rules about liability. That has been shelved. It is on hold indefinitely, may or may not ever get resuscitated. In the United States, there have been proposals for liability laws that clarify this, but it's not happening. So it's probably going to end up in the courts in both countries. We have a good development, in my view, from this character AI case where a judge in Florida ruled that character AI it will be treated as a product and not a service, so it'll be subject to stricter liability rules under product liability potentially in the U.S. Whether that holds up, whether that gets appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed, we don't know. But I do think that the liability should flow up, ideally, to the developers if the developers didn't take proper precautions to make their AI systems as safe as they possibly could.
We do know it will be appealed and appealed and appealed.
We do know that will happen, yes.
let's get this gentleman, the woman in the yellow, and then the gentleman there, and then the person, oh my goodness, a woman with two X chromosomes there. Good, okay, for David.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So self-spawning agents, spawning agents, spawning agents, spawning. How long before we run out of storage capacity or the capability to build additional storage capacity? Or will we find a way to compress agentic data so it's more efficiently stored? And secondly, Gordon, on your value creation point, so adult entertainment created or was one of the early creations of value for the internet. In the agentic world, is it more hackers or is it more something more useful, which is likely to create that value?
I think on the spawning and the usage of memory, like you had to impose constraints, right? And naturally, agents have to pay for the cost, right? And eventually, I think they will naturally just constrain themselves. If they're trying to solve something really complicated and the value is there, sure, they'll pay for it. But if it's not worth it, then they'll stop.
They don't get memory for free. They got to pay for the resources.
Yeah. And then in terms of value creation and who captures it, well, I think you had to, if they're given no guide rails at all, right? If it's fully autonomous, you had to give them human values for the good of humanity, for the expansion of the human race. Otherwise, I don't know what value it could get. So I think you had to have some, if you're going to give it more autonomy, you had to give it value as well.
Just super quick. On the other side, agentic computing is much more efficient than LLMs. LLMs are absolute energy hogs. Agents are can be tiny little things, and when programmed efficiently, could save a lot of energy. So they might save that resource. But I agree, Gordon's point's absolutely right. These are economic questions of value add and how things get allocated.
Great. Please.
Yes, hi. Thank you for spinning up so many ideas with us. So my thesis is that this agentic autonomous economy is actually possible today. So we have smart contracts. We can digitalize actually all the data flows that we right now have in our economies. We have the AP2 payments protocol. So we have digital currencies, we have cryptocurrencies, we have everything in place. However, no one really works on, let's say, also a decentralized autonomous economy. So my question is, which are the roadblocks, and do you see any nation that is basically focused on bringing this big level of automation to reality? So that we really focus on, being more creative and working on other more exciting stuff in this world.
I mean, I think the one roadblock that has come up over and over is trust, right? I don't know about for your security one, whether those are all agents owned and controlled by one company versus this economy of other people's agents, and then that the trust thing is the part that is an issue, and also these rules that give it these values, right? We're kind of hand-wavy about that, right? If we really want that, then somebody has to define how that's going to work and what those rules are. So these are very trust kind of safety issues that seem to be a blocker for at least this more broad economy versus a...
I think it's going to slow adoption. I agree,
Sure.
it's going to slow adoption.
Yeah.
I don't see the roadblocks. I mean, I see this thing just ripping loose. I mean, it's just moving fast. We sit here next year, we're not going to have a hard time pointing to case studies. But a lot of this is beneath the hood. The big tier companies aren't telling you. We got agents doing all kinds of stuff.
Oh, no, they'll tell you.
One of the famous founders of, or second generation founders of the internet, Scott Bradner of Harvard, and the Internet Engineering Task Force, had two great aphorisms about the perennial conundrum of the internet. And he said, it's who says who sets the rules and who pays for what. And I think that is still coming, that returns to us an echo in the era of agentic AI. There was a gentleman there, and then there was a woman there, and there's a hand at the very back. Everyone's questions has to be really short, as well as the answers, so we get to everyone.
Yeah, I try to formulate it very short. You have been talking about the MCP protocols. we rather also need economic interaction protocols, replicating the function of contracts compatible with our legal systems, where you can assign liability, identity. And I don't think smart contracts do that at the moment, because it need to be totally independent of a blockchain. So what's your point? What type of new protocols, especially to get to an economic exchange, do we need? And I think we are missing this economic type contract protocols, open source, that would enable that.
Well, I think blockchain gets us halfway there, right? But you had to impose some sort of identity verification, but also, what is at stake, right? As a human being, we have identity, and if we do something wrong, then we get put in jail or whatnot, right? On blockchains, it's very natural if you actually stake some assets, maybe digital assets, maybe fiat that's tokenized. And the identity needs to be linked, and the action needs to be linked, and the punishment needs to be linked to those assets. It could get slashed if you do something wrong. So I think we have the building blocks. It's just, it takes a bit of time to actually put them all together.
Great. Woman, please, yeah.
Yeah. So just going back to the definition of agentic AI, I'm just curious to know if there is a difference between AI agents and agentic AI, because they have been used in the same breath almost. But my understanding is they're different. And this is a double-edged question, but you mentioned self-spawning AI. Do you think that this idea of singularity is a true threat later, which is basically when AI self-optimizes itself to a point where it is much more intelligent than humans? So lots to unpack there, sorry.
You want a yes/no answer? I'll go with no.
Well, you're saying no to what,
yes.
though? There was like two questions there.
The
What is
last
agentic?
part of it, kind of super intelligence.
Develop why you come to the conclusion no, because I'm actually mystified. Go on.
Because the technology this AI is based on, it just does not have the capability that this science fiction fantasy of these AIs self-improving in the ways that people imagine. Yes, they can change like a virus, but it's not intelligence.
There's fucking $500 billion worth of market valuation on the promenade. If you tell
He's the
that to
finance
people,
guy. How do I short it? Please.
you're going to blow the whole thing up.
Yeah.
But do you think that's forever going to be the case?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it will require some major technological breakthroughs in AI that have not occurred. And it's not going to occur by AI software writing itself. It requires ideas of humans to create these ideas. The current AI is not capable of this.
What I'll say is decentralized systems tend to have emergent properties. And so things emerge out of them that you don't anticipate through the interaction of the different entities. I think there's absolutely no question that in many ways this stuff is going to become superhuman or super powerful. And just last year, 2 major red teaming tests were done, one by OpenAI, one independently by Anthropic, with teams basically threatening to the LLMs, we're going to shut you down, without saying it directly. It's just saying it through email systems and the corporate email systems, et cetera. And the LLM models got aggressive. First, they tried to charm these people. No, you don't want to shut us down. And created fake emails from people, et cetera.
Read the details of these things. They're very contrived how those things
Fine,
are run.
okay, fine. They're contrived.
Yes.
Anyway, my vote is this stuff's becoming super powerful. It's the greatest threat to mankind in history. There's no other technology that we've developed. There's no natural threat except maybe a
Nuclear
common
bombs
or
are pretty bad.
Yeah, they're not as bad. I think this is a greater threat, also because of probability. But I think they're a very significant threat, and we've got to take it seriously and focus on AI safety. And I'm glad that's come up in so many discussions this year.
Yeah.
But I understand James, we'll see.
I'm all for AI
come back.
safety, but we should be safe against the stuff AI is doing right now, like disinformation and deepfakes and discrimination and bias and maybe jobs, unclear. And this, in my opinion, is just to get you to not pay attention to the current harms to make this science fiction future.
So I actually mostly agree with James here, but I do think, Rod, that it's probably good that some people be worried about what you're worried about too. Yeah. And I actually think the solutions to the things that James is bringing up are actually quite similar to the solutions you're bringing up. And it's liability in many ways. It's like figuring out a legal structure that holds the companies that develop these things liable for harms that they create. And I think that will give us a lot more caution in the world of developers, at least in countries that have rule of law.
But people also said, the internet can't go down. Well, I got to tell you, in 2012, Operation Global Blackout was a formal threat by a global hacking network to shut down the entire global internet. And you don't know about it because there was almost no coverage, because part of our strategy in dealing with that crisis, and I was the #1 crisis manager because I was CEO of ICANN, that is the steward administrator of the domain name system that was threatened to be attacked. It was a credible, real attack. The world came together, we prevented it. What would have happened if the internet went down for a minute, an hour, a day, or a week, or 2 weeks? We have no idea. We can't do an outage without turning the internet off, and you don't want to turn it off. Because we don't know all the things they're related to. That's a global scale crisis that almost happened in 2012, and it was a wake-up call for me. I knew it could happen. I analyzed it when I took the job, and I was prepared for it. But so if that can happen in the internet, trust me, with the agentic AI coming along, it's going to be intense stuff. And on the financial services thing, I've worked on a lot of financial payment systems, large scale, security, trust, security. It's going to take time to get the mature systems to move all that money. But they're all working on agentic stuff.
Well, we didn't have that breakdown, but when I worked at Facebook, we had like a day, 5-ish years ago, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram went down, and our badge readers went down, so we couldn't get into the office, and someone literally had to break a window to get into a data center to do a thing to get the whole thing back up and running. So
was that good for humanity that day?
It might have been. It was good for
James always brings it back.
It was good for Signal, and it was good for Telegram for sure. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So let me do this. Lots of people have questions. We're not going to have a chance to answer them, but here's what I'd like to do riskily, because we're almost out of time. You're allowed like 30 seconds to say your question or observation if you have one, and then I will sum up and say goodbye. So you're closest to the mic, but you have like 30 seconds. I will cut you off.
She was next.
Sorry. Finally, you actually walked up. Great.
A question from professor of computer science who's working on these topics for 15 years. And I'm trying to figure out if we have a better solution to AI safety, because the fundamental problem in trust is that these types of models are based on nonlinear relationships. In mechanistic interpretability, we don't know how these decisions are being made. And everything with chain of thought and all of the other things are just band-aids to try to kind of capture the common case. So everything that you just said are based on the common case and not on all of the edge cases. And we don't have a technological solution to explain what these models are basing their decisions on. That does not exist in mechanistic interpretability. So I think with all of these deep learning-based approaches, we need to really be careful about adversarial issues, biases, and all of the stuff that James just mentioned. So my question is, are we further out to having a solution to that?
So that's interesting. Would you like to join the panel?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, so like I said, no one is going to answer, but you're allowed to. But it would be useful to hear from the room. So please.
Really quick. Gordon, you said you didn't want to trust an agent with your credit card. I agree. David, you said you didn't want to trust an agent with your login information. A year from now, will those be solved? A year from now, will I be able to, and you be able to give an agent credit card information, login information for all your frequent flyer programs and tell it, if the price of a ticket between here and here goes below this, I want you to buy it for me, log into my frequent flyer, get my frequent flyer credits, and if I don't, and then tell me you did it, and I have 24 hours. Will that all be possible a year from now? Predict the future.
Okay, pass the mic to the gentleman here. I'm riskily giving you the last word.
No. So thanks for the discussion. I actually had a question, not a statement, but around the AI and safety. Even if we agree, and I think, or if we find solutions, I don't think it will take way too long. Policymakers, unfortunately, don't move as fast as the technology does. My biggest concern around agentic economies and agents for all of us is more the acceleration of inequality.
Okay.
Because, all of us sitting over here have access to these technologies, and the people that could benefit the most from it don't. So, love to have a discussion
Thank
later,
you.
perhaps, on it.
Okay, so the last question goes, of course, to the audience. Again, it's very simple. I'm polling you, agentic economies, reality or hype? Now that we finally heard from the panelists, to end the section, who believes that agentic economies are the reality here or soon? Raise your hand. That's like 61.3% of you. Who believes that it's hype? Raise your hand.
Both.
Naysayers, it's both. It can be both. It can be both. That is a great way to end. So lots of thank yous. Thank you to you for being with us. Thank you to AI House for hosting us. And please join me in thanking the panelists.